Cycling infrastructure refers to all infrastructure which may be used by cyclists. This includes the same network of roads and streets used by motorists, except those roads from which cyclists have been banned, plus additional bikeways that are not available to motor vehicles, such as bike paths, bike lanes, cycle tracks and, where permitted, sidewalks, plus amenities like bike racks for parking and specialized traffic signs and signals. The manner in which the public road network is designed, built and managed can have a significant effect on the utility and safety of cycling. The cycling network may be able to provide the users with direct, convenient routes, minimizing unnecessary delay and effort in reaching the destinations. Settlements with a dense road network of interconnected streets tend to be viable utility cycling environments. History. Bikeways. A bikeway is a lane, route, way, a path which in some manner is specifically designed and/or designated for bicycle travel. Bike lanes demarcated by a painted marking are quite common in many cities. Cycle tracks demarcated by barriers, bollards or boulevards are quite common in some European countries such as the Netherlands, Denmark and Germany. They are also increasingly common in other major cities such as New York City, Melbourne, Ottawa, Vancouver and San Francisco, Montreal and Davis, California, which have had segregated cycling facilities with barriers for several decades, are among the earliest examples in North American cities. Terminology. Some bikeways are separated from motor traffic by physical constraints, bicycle trail, cycle track, but others are partially separated only by painted markings, bike lane, buffer bike lane, and contraflow bike lane. Some share the roadway with motor vehicles, bicycle boulevard, sharrow, advisory bike lane, or shared with pedestrians, greenway, shared use path. Segregation. The term bikeway is largely used in North America to describe all routes that have been designed or updated to encourage more cycling and make cycling safer. In some jurisdictions such as the United Kingdom, segregated cycling facility is sometimes preferred to describe cycling infrastructure which has varying degrees of separation from motorized traffic, or which has excluded pedestrian traffic in the case of exclusive bike paths. There is no single usage of segregation. In some cases it can mean the exclusion of motor vehicles and in other cases the exclusion of pedestrians as well. Thus, it includes bike lanes with solid painted lines but not lanes with dotted lines and advisory bike lanes where motor vehicles are allowed to encroach on the lane. It includes cycle tracks as physically distinct from the roadway and sidewalk, and it includes bike paths in their own right of way exclusive to cycling. Paths which are shared with pedestrians and other non-motorized traffic are not considered segregated and are typically called shared use path, multi-use path in North America and shared use footway in the UK. Guides. Various guides exist to define the different types of bikeway infrastructure, including UK Department for Transport Manual, the geometric design of pedestrian, cycle and equestrian routes, Sustrans Design Manual, UK Department of Transport Local Transport Note 208, Cycle Infrastructure Design, the Danish Road Authority Guide Registration and Classification of Paths, the Dutch CRO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials Guide to Bikeway Facilities, the Federal Highway Administration Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and the U.S. National Association of City Transportation Officials Urban Bikeway Design Guide. Safety. There have been a lot of studies on the safety of all types of bikeways. Proponents say that segregation of cyclists from faster frequent motorized traffic is necessary to provide a safe and welcoming cycling environment. Opponents point out the increased risk from various types of infrastructure, including shared use paths. Legislation. Different countries have different ways to legally define and enforce bikeways. Bikeway controversies. Controversies have surrounded bikeways, particularly in North America and the United Kingdom. Some detractors argue that one must be careful in interpreting the operation of dedicated or segregated bikeways, cycle facilities across different designs and contexts. What works for the Netherlands won't necessarily work elsewhere. Proponents argue that dedicated bike lanes have been implemented in many cities and are both popular and safe. Bikeway selection. Jurisdictions have guidelines around the selection of the right bikeway treatments in order to make routes more comfortable and safer for cycling. Bikeway types. Bikeways can fall into these main categories: separated in roadway bikeways such as bike lanes and buffered bike lanes, physically separated in roadway bikeways such as cycle tracks, right-of-way paths such as bike paths and shared-use paths, and shared in roadway bikeways such as bike boulevards, shared lane markings, and advisory bike lanes. The exact categorization changes depending on the jurisdiction and organization, while many just list the types by the commonly used names. Separated in roadway bikeway. Bike lanes, or cycle lanes, are on road lanes marked with paint dedicated to cycling and typically excluding all motorized traffic. Buffered bike lanes. A buffered bike lane is typically a lane with a wide painted buffer to demarcate a larger gap between the cycle lane and other traffic. Contraflow bike lanes. Contraflow bike lanes are typically a painted lane added to some one-way streets as a way to allow cycling traffic to safely travel in the opposite direction of all other traffic, including motorized vehicles and bicycles. Physically separated in roadway bikeway. Cycle tracks. Separated bike lanes. Protected bike lanes. A physically marked and separated lane dedicated for cycling that is on or directly adjacent to the roadway but typically excludes all motorized traffic with some sort of vertical barrier. Bike paths. Bike paths are paths with their own right-of-way dedicated to cycling, though in many cases shared with pedestrians and other non-motorized traffic. Greenways. A greenway is a long, narrow piece of land, often used for recreation and pedestrian and bicycle use or traffic, and sometimes for streetcar, light rail or retail uses. Shared use path. A shared use path supports multiple modes, such as walking, bicycling, inline skating and people in wheelchairs. Shared in roadway bikeways. Bicycle boulevards. A bicycle boulevard is a low-speed street which has been optimized for bicycle traffic. Bicycle boulevards discourage cut-through motor vehicle traffic but allow local motor vehicle traffic. They are designed to give priority to cyclists as through-going traffic. Shared lane markings. Advisory bike lane. An advisory bike lane is a bike lane which motorists may legally encroach. Advisory bike lanes are often installed on low-volume streets and in combination with the center line removal. These markings give bicyclists a space to ride, but are also available to motorists if space is needed to pass oncoming traffic. Roadways with legal access for cycling. Bicyclists are legally allowed to travel on many roadways in accordance with the rules of the road for drivers of vehicles. Road shoulder. A road shoulder is a reserved lane on the verge of a roadway that is often used by bicyclists and also serves as an emergency stopping lane for motor vehicles. Bicycle superhighways. Denmark and the Netherlands have pioneered the concept of bicycle superhighways to increase the speed, safety, and comfort of bicycle commuting. Since then, London and Flanders have also started building bicycle superhighways. The physical design of the routes changes depending on the circumstances and can include shared-in road bikeways, bike lanes, and cycle tracks, making it difficult to categorize into a degree of separation from other traffic. The first Dutch route opened in 2004 between Breda and Etten. Many others have been added since then. The first Danish route, C99, opened in 2012 between the Vesterbro rail station in Copenhagen and Albertslund, a western suburb. The route costs 13.4 million Danish kroner and is 17.5 kilometers long, built with few stops in new paths away from traffic. Service stations with air pumps are located at regular intervals, and where the route must cross streets, handholds and running boards are provided so cyclists can wait without having to put their feet on the ground. The cost of building a bicycle superhighway depends on many things, but is usually between €300,000 per kilometer and €800,000 per kilometer. Cycling-friendly streetscape modifications. There are various measures cities and regions often take on the roadway to make it more cycling-friendly and safer. Aspects of infrastructure may be viewed as either cyclist-hostile or as cyclist-friendly. Measures to encourage cycling include traffic calming, traffic reduction, junction treatment, traffic control systems to recognize cyclists and give them priority, exempt cyclists from banned turns and access restrictions, implement contraflow cycle lanes on one-way streets, implement on-street parking restrictions, provide advanced stop lines, bypasses for cyclists at traffic signals, marking wide curb lanes, and marking shared bus cycle lanes. Traffic reduction. Removing traffic can be achieved by straightforward diversion or alternatively reduction. Diversion involves routing through traffic away from roads used by high numbers of cyclists and pedestrians. Examples of diversion include the construction of arterial bypasses and ring roads around urban centers. Indirect methods involve reducing the infrastructural capacity dedicated to moving motorized vehicles. This can involve reducing the number of road lanes, closing bridges to certain vehicle types, and creating vehicle-restricted zones or environmental traffic cells. In the 1970s, the Dutch city of Delft began restricting private car traffic from crossing the city centre. Similarly, Groningen is divided into 4 zones that cannot be crossed by private motor traffic. Cyclists and other traffic can pass between the zones, and cycling accounts for 50% plus of trips in Groningen. The Swedish city of Gothenburg uses a similar system of traffic cells. Another approach is to reduce the capacity to park cars. Starting in the 1970s, the city of Copenhagen, which is now noted for high cycling levels, adopted a policy of reducing available car parking capacity by several % per year. The city of Amsterdam, where around 40% of all trips are by bicycle, adopted similar parking reduction policies in the 80s and 90s. Direct traffic reduction methods can involve straightforward bans or more subtle methods like road pricing schemes or road diets. The London congestion charge reportedly resulted in a significant increase in cycle use within the affected area. Traffic calming. Speed reduction has traditionally been attempted by statutory speed limits. Recent implementations of shared space schemes have delivered significant traffic speed reductions. The reductions are sustainable without the need for speed limits or speed limit enforcement. In Norrköping, mean traffic speeds in 2006 dropped from 21 to 16 km/h since the implementation of such a scheme. Even without shared street implementation, creating 30 km/h zones has been shown to reduce crash rates and increase numbers of cyclists and pedestrians. Other studies have revealed that lower speeds reduce community severance caused by high-speed roads. Research has shown that there is more neighborhood interaction and community cohesion when speeds are reduced to 20 mph. One-way streets. German research indicates that making one-way streets two-way for cyclists results in a reduction in the total number of collisions. In Belgium, all one-way streets in 50 km/h zones are by default two-way for cyclists. A Danish road directorate states that in town centres it is important to be able to cycle in both directions in all streets, and that in certain circumstances, two-way cycle traffic can be accommodated in an otherwise one-way street. Two-way cycling on one-way streets. One-way street systems can be viewed as either a product of traffic management that focuses on trying to keep motorized vehicles moving regardless of the social and other impacts, such as by some cycling campaigners, or seen as a useful tool for traffic calming and for eliminating rat runs. In the view of UK traffic planners, one-way streets can disadvantage cyclists by increasing trip length, delays and hazards associated with weaving manoeuvres at junctions. In Northern Europe countries such as the Netherlands, however, cyclists are frequently granted exemptions from one-way street restrictions, which improve cycling traffic flow while restricting motorized vehicles. German research indicates that making one-way streets two-way for cyclists results in a reduction in the total number of collisions. There are often restrictions to what one-way streets are good candidates for allowing two-way cycling traffic. In Belgium, road authorities can in principle allow any one-way streets in 50 km/h zones to be two-way for cyclists if the available lane is at least 3 meters wide and no specific local circumstances prevent it. Denmark, a country with high cycling levels, does not use one-way systems to improve traffic flow. Some commentators argue that the initial goal should be to dismantle large one-way street systems as a traffic calming, traffic reduction measure, followed by the provision of two-way cyclist access on any one-way streets that remain. Intersection junction design. In general, junction designs that favor higher speed turning, weaving and merging movements by motorists tend to be hostile for cyclists. Free-flowing arrangements can be hazardous for cyclists and should be avoided. Features such as large entry curvature, slip roads and high-flow roundabouts are associated with increased risk of car-cyclist collisions. Cycling advocates argue for modifications and alternative junction types that resolve these issues, such as reducing curb radii on street corners, eliminating slip roads and replacing large roundabouts with signalized intersections. Protected intersection. Another approach which the Netherlands innovated is called in North America protected intersection, which reconfigures intersections to reduce risk to cyclists as they cross a turn. Some American cities are starting to pilot protected intersections. Bike box. A bike box is a designated area at the head of a traffic lane at a signalized intersection that provides bicyclists with a safe and visible way to get ahead of queuing traffic during the red signal phase. Roundabouts. On large roundabouts of the design typically used in the UK and Ireland, cyclists have an injury accident rate that is 14 to 16 times that of motorists. Research indicates that excessive sightlines at uncontrolled intersections compound these effects. In the UK, a survey of over 8,000 highly experienced and mainly adult male cyclists touring club members found that 28% avoided roundabouts on the regular journey if at all possible. The Dutch Crow guidelines recommend roundabouts only for intersections with motorized traffic up to 1500 per hour. In order to accommodate greater volumes of traffic, they recommend traffic light intersections a grade separation for cyclists. Examples of grade separation for cyclists include tunnels, or more spectacularly, raised floating roundabouts for cyclists. Traffic signals. Traffic control systems. How traffic signals are designed and implemented directly impacts cyclists. For instance, poorly adjusted vehicle detector systems, used to trigger signal changes, may not correctly detect cyclists. This can leave cyclists in the position of having to run red lights if no motorized vehicle arrives to trigger a signal change. Some cities use urban adaptive traffic control systems, which use linked traffic signals to manage traffic in response to changes in demand. There is an argument that using a UTC system merely to provide for increased capacity for motor traffic will simply drive growth in such traffic. However, there are more direct negative impacts. For instance, where signals are arranged to provide motor traffic with so-called green waves, this can create red waves for other road uses such as cyclists and public transport services. Traffic managers in Copenhagen have now turned this approach on its head and are linking cyclist-specific traffic signals on a major arterial bike lane to provide green waves for rush-hour cycle traffic. However, this would still not resolve the problem of red waves for slow and fast cyclists. Cycling-specific measures that can be applied at traffic signals include the use of advanced stop lines and/or bypasses. In some cases, cyclists might be given a free turn or a signal bypass if turning into a road on the near side. Signposting: in many places worldwide, special signposts for bicycles are used to indicate directions and distances to destinations for cyclists. Apart from signposting in and between urban areas, mountain pass cycling milestones have become an important service for bicycle tourists. They provide cyclists with information about their current position with regard to the summit of the mountain pass. Widening outside lanes: one method for reducing potential friction between cyclists and motorized vehicles is to provide wide curb or near-side lanes or wide outside through lane. These extra wide lanes increase the probability that motorists pass cyclists at a safe distance without having to change lanes. This is held to be particularly important on routes with a high proportion of wide vehicles such as buses or heavy goods vehicles. They also provide more room for cyclists to filter past queues of cars in congested conditions and to safely overtake each other. Due to the tendency of all vehicle users to stay in the center of the lane, it would be necessary to subdivide the cycle lane with a broken white line to facilitate safe overtaking. Overtaking is indispensable for cyclists, as speeds are not dependent on the legal speed limit, but on the rider's capability. The use of such lanes is specifically endorsed by Cycling, the way ahead for towns and cities, the European Commission policy document on cycle promotion. The UK Cyclists Touring Club argues for a marked lane width of 4.25 meters. It is argued that, on undivided roads, this width provides cyclists with adequate clearance from passing wide vehicles while being sufficiently narrow to deter motorists from attempting to double up and form two lanes. This doubling up effect may be related to junctions. At non-junction locations, greater width might be preferable if this effect can be avoided. Shared space schemes extend this principle further by removing the reliance on lane markings altogether, and also removing road signs and signals, allowing all road users to use any part of the road, and giving all road users equal priority and equal responsibility for each other's safety. Experiences where these schemes are in use show that road users, particularly motorists, undirected by signs, curbs, or road markings, reduce their speed and establish eye contact with other users. Results from the thousands of such implementations worldwide all show casualty reductions, and most also show reduced journey times. After the partial conversion of London's Kensington High Street to shared space, accidents decreased by 44%. CFI argues for a marked lane width of 4.25 meters. On undivided roads, width provides cyclists with adequate clearance from passing HGVs while being narrow enough to deter drivers from doubling up to form two lanes. This doubling up effect may be related to junctions. At non-junction locations, greater width might be preferable if this effect can be avoided. The European Commission specifically endorses wide lanes in its policy document on cycling promotion. Cycling, the way ahead for towns and cities. Shared bus and cycle lanes. Shared bus and cycle lane. Shared bus and cycle lanes are also a widely endorsed method for providing a more comfortable and safer space for cyclists. Depending on the width of the lane, the speeds and number of buses, and other local factors, the safety and popularity of this arrangement vary. Road surface. Bicycle tires being narrow. Road surface is more important than for other transport, for both comfort and safety. The type and placement of storm drains, manholes, surface markings, and the general road surface quality should all be taken into account by a bicycle transportation engineer. Drain grates, for example, must not catch wheels. Trip end facilities, bicycle parking, storage arrangements. As secure and convenient bicycle parking is a key factor in influencing a person's decision to cycle. Decent parking infrastructure must be provided to encourage the uptake of cycling. Decent bicycle parking involves weatherproof infrastructure such as lockers, stands, manned or unmanned bicycle parks, as well as bike parking facilities within workplaces to facilitate bicycle commuting. It also will help if certain legal arrangements are put into place to enable legitimate ad hoc parking. For example, to allow people to lock their bicycles to railings, signs and other street furniture when individual proper bike stands are unavailable. Other trip end facilities. Some people need to wear special clothes such as business suits or uniforms in the daily work. In some cases, the nature of the cycling infrastructure and the prevailing weather conditions may make it very hard to both cycle and maintain the work clothes in a presentable condition. It is argued that such workers can be encouraged to cycle by providing lockers, changing rooms and shower facilities where they can change before starting work. Theft reduction measures. The theft of bicycles is one of the major problems that slow the development of urban cycling. Bicycle theft discourages regular cyclists from buying new bicycles, as well as putting off people who might want to invest in a bicycle. Several measures can help reduce bicycle theft. Bicycle registration to enable recovery if stolen, making cyclists aware of anti-theft devices and their effective use. Mounting sting operations to catch thieves. Secure bicycle parking, offering safe bicycle parking facilities such as guarded bicycle parking of bicycle lockers, promoting devices to enable remote tracking of a bicycle's location. Targeting cycle thieves, using folding bicycles which can be safely stored in cloakrooms or under desks. Certain European countries apply such measures with success, such as the Netherlands or certain German cities using registration and recovery. Since mid-2004, France has instituted a system of registration, in some places allowing stolen bicycles to be put on file in partnership with the urban cyclists associations. This approach has reputedly increased the stolen bicycle recovery rate to more than 40%. By comparison, before the commencement of registration, the recovery rate in France was about 2%. In some areas of the United Kingdom, bicycles fitted with location tracking devices are left poorly secured in theft hotspots. When the bike is stolen, the police can locate it and arrest the thieves. This sometimes leads to the dismantling of organized bicycle theft rings, as bike theft generally enjoys a very low priority with the police. Bicycle lift. Some cyclists have difficulty climbing steep hills, and devices such as the Trampe bicycle lift in Trondheim have been developed to help alleviate this problem.